There's a news report from China saying that Shanghai is now allowing 10 Tesla vehicles to carry out tests of full self-driving as it begins a path to rolling out in China. Tesla's path to Robotaxi is moving fast, and we're learning more and more about Elon Musk's plans. Today, we'll review some of the major things he said about it at the annual shareholder meeting. I've got Hans Nelson with us, and we're going to review some of these videos. Hans has his own YouTube channel called Hans C. Nelson. Thank you, Hans.
Thanks for having me, Herbert.
So there's a number of new information that he dropped. Today, we're going to talk full self-driving. We're going to talk Robotaxi, and we're going to start off with this news here that's brand new, that Shanghai is moving forward. So you and I have covered a number of news items about Shanghai and China, but this is it. This is the next step. Shanghai is allowing 10 Tesla vehicles to carry out tests of the company's most advanced autonomous driving software. And it's reported by Shanghai Observer. So this is the news and beautiful photo of the sort of a service center in China. So the pilot use of FSD, I don't know, but I believe this would mean, I think that there was reports about the employees of Tesla first doing it before it becomes full rollout. We also reported previously that Shanghai created a free trade zone, and this is where they're allowing autonomous driving, but also data sharing outside of China. And it says here that, this is what the report said. Tesla's cross-field application proves that cutting-edge products such as smart new energy vehicles have a very obvious boost to other related industries. So they really think that FSD and technology like this is going to improve the economy, and they're very supportive of it. What's your thoughts on this news report?
Well, it's great to see another step forward for Tesla in being able to roll out FSD in China. We've been seeing lots of little things like this, and obviously Tesla has been working on getting everything in place. And China is the next big market that FSD really needs to come to as Tesla works on really being able to roll out this software worldwide and to really turn on the money spigot that's going to come from having an FSD product that is essentially software as a service that can run on millions of vehicles around the world that they can generate revenue from. And, Elon was talking last night about ARK Invest's analysis and their predictions that Tesla could reach a $5 to $7 trillion market cap somewhere around 2029. A lot of that value, the vast majority of it, is based on the success of FSD. And if FSD can't come to China, then that's a huge portion of the revenue, because that's really the second largest market for Tesla, and it's the first largest auto market in the world. And so they have to be successful there. So it's just a good piece of data to see this really is moving forward there, that Tesla is aggressive. We've still got some questions about exactly how this is going to be able to work, given that the data that Tesla needs in order to train this model for China specifically has some restrictions it's put on it by the government. And so we've kind of heard some things back and forth on how that's going to work. It's still a little bit unclear, but it's just one more step that gets us a little bit closer.
One more step, and we'll keep reporting every time those steps. Good point about China, of course, is critical. A lot of people, do you think that it's going to roll out in China first? 8.8. They seem to be moving faster than the US, but it doesn't make sense to me because all the testing has been in the US. What do you think?
Yeah, that's let's just workshop both sides. Reasons why it would roll out in China first is that China, this is a national priority, whether it's just NEVs, these new energy vehicle is what they call BEVs there. So whether it's just electric vehicles, but also China has a huge premium and focus that they're putting on technology. They want to be first in AI. They want to be first in humanoid robots. They are going to want to be first in autonomous driving technology. And according to reports from researchers inside of China, they still believe that FSD is ahead of whatever China has growing in-house. And so they're going to want this to be there, just like they wanted to bring Tesla into China in the first place. So I would say those are reasons for. Reasons against, they're still uncomfortable with the data, and we don't know how, obviously China is going to need a modified version of the FSD neural net stack in order to work properly in China because it's a different driving environment than here in North America. And so that has to have accommodations made for it. So if they haven't figured out exactly how they're going to do that, then I don't know how this rolls out there first. I think it would
Hmm.
have to probably roll out here in the United States first. So those are kind of the two sets of arguments for and against. I
Hmm.
think that, I guess, just to dive a little bit deeper, that the US based stack could begin operating in China and it would do okay. It's going to be a lot worse performance there than it would be here. But with the right set of driver monitoring, they could at least begin to collect data
Yeah.
on how the system is performing there, not necessarily, that's not going to be the full set of data that they need to train a China specific model. And they would still have the same restrictions on does that data, does China allow that data to get exported to train? Does Tesla have to build a full training cluster there in China, those kinds of things. But it either way, the long term, like if we think about the specific path between here and success of FSD in China, there's a lot of different ways that it can go. But one of the things that we just know, if you think about it from first principles, is that if FSD is able to accomplish the plans that Elon has for it, and we're tracking the progress towards those goals, that it should be able to be a dominant player in the Chinese market. And everything else is just window dressing on how.
Yeah. Well, we'll see what happens. Let's go and take a look at 3 clips of Elon Musk talking about full self-driving and Robotaxi, how that's going to work. The first one is just very generic. He just, started off the meeting talking about FSD improving exponentially. Let's watch this.
We're obviously making great progress in solving the sustainable energy problem, with electric vehicles, with stationary storage, with solar. And then I think in terms of the value of the company, autonomy is just such a mind-blowing thing that, like I said, you guys understand, but I think most of the world does not yet understand. So, in talking to a lot of the sort of the big institutional investors, when they're often in like New York and they don't drive cars, so I'll be like, have you driven our car? Or have you tried self-driving? The version 12.3, and they're like, oh no, okay. Well, you should try it. That would be a good thing to do. And if you just plot the points on the curve of how well autonomy is progressing, and just believe the curve, it's headed towards unsupervised full self-driving very quickly at an exponential pace. If you just, yeah, I mean, yeah, so. It's really as simple as that. And in fact, I'd invite you to just do it personally. Just say, okay, with each release, how many miles do you drive before you have to intervene? It's like literally that simple. With each release, you'll see there's a big improvement, and it looks like an exponential. So, and it's very clear that will actually go to the point where it is actually far safer than a person driving the car. And I have some insight into the next releases, because we've got basically for every release that's on the road, we kind of see what the next generation release is and a little bit about the release after that. So we have some insight into where it's going, and it's really amazing. No question whatsoever that will far exceed human safety. Yeah, no question. So.
Let's pause it there before he gets talking about how Robotaxi will work. But his confidence that FSD is going to improve, I don't know if he said it here, but he did say it later, that every single release is going to be 10x, 10 times better than the previous one. So his confidence, what do you think about exponential curve here?
Yeah, I think one of the comments he made yesterday was that, from version to version, it'll be at least 2 and then sometimes as much as 10. So he was a little bit measured in the comments yesterday then, saying that every release is gonna be 10, which I think is probably good for investors to set their expectations of that we can see improvements, but they don't have to be just huge, massive leaps forward. But that does not change the fact that it's an exponential curve, that if you're going kind of wandering between each release being a 2 to a 5 times or 10 times increase, even if it's just 2 times every time, that's still exponential. It still gets us there. And it's just a little bit, you know, shallower exponential curve. But, that's the thing about exponentials, is that even if they're seemingly shallow, if you give them time, the gains are ridiculous. And that's why he's so confident that it's definitely going to be much safer than a human, is that it is an exponential curve. So
Yep.
that's the main thing to zero in on here. I would just reiterate the fact that I think that these, he said that point 0.3 is its own version, point 0.4 is its own version, point 0.5 is its own version, point 0.6 is its own version, and so on and so forth. It's going to continue to be that. And I think we're going to stay on 12 until they get to, because he did say version 12 should be unsupervised. And so they're just going to call it 12 until it's unsupervised, and they're going to keep doing new versions until they get there. Um, with each of those versions, they do have a hard, like the beginning, the first half of getting that shipped to customers and making it a positive user experience when customers get the car is the hardest. And then the second half, that's where you really start to see the polish put on and the shine, and you really experience just how good can this model be. Um, so we're not to that point yet with 12.4. Elon has visibility into what that looks like behind the scenes, and he's very excited about it, and seemingly also very excited about 12.5. So that is something just to keep in mind, that like, we're just because he's saying it's exponential and it's going to get there doesn't mean that every time they roll out something that it's going to feel like this amazing leap forward. But that doesn't change the fact that we are moving rapidly towards an autonomous vehicle future. And if give this 24 months based on the pace of progress that we're making right now, even just saying linear progress from here, it's really exciting. And then if you say that it is somewhat exponential, then it's really, really exciting.
Perfect. Okay. I do believe it's going to happen. Let's listen to how Robotaxi will work.
And I think I have mentioned this, but like sometimes it's like helpful to sort of reiterate and connect some of the dots, because sometimes people wonder, well, how do you go from this big fleet to actually monetizing the fleet in an autonomous situation? And it's actually a combination of it's like Airbnb and Uber to some degree. So like there'll be some cars that Tesla owns itself, it's kind of like an Uber fashion. But then for the fleet that is owned by our customers, it will be like an Airbnb thing. You can add or subtract your car to the fleet whenever you want. So you can say, like, I'm going away for a week. At just one tap on your Tesla app, your car gets added to the fleet, and it just makes money for you while you're gone. Yeah. So you can say you can add it to the fleet for a few hours, for a few days, for a few weeks. Whenever you want it back, you can say, come back, and car will come right back. And I'm highly confident that it will far exceed the value, like the revenue made by the owner of the car will far exceed the actual monthly payment. And then Tesla will obviously take a rev share on that, but most of the money will go to the owner of the car, and this is actually going to work. This is what will happen. So mark my words, this is simply a matter of time. Now, admittedly, I'm a little optimistic sometimes. So I don't have complete lack of self-awareness. But if I wasn't optimistic, this wouldn't exist. This factory wouldn't exist, So So, that's what my brother, who's awesome, he's here, just got reelected.
Okay, so that's him talking about how Robotaxi will work, Airbnb and Uber combined. He's said these things before, right? Anything that you've seen yesterday that was brand new that you hadn't heard about how Robotaxi could work?
Not a whole lot on how Robotaxi could work, but one of the things that he did say that was really encouraging to me is that when they do roll out improvements in the capability of FSD, for example, like with 12.4, they're removing the nag. That's kind of a significant change versus 12.3 in the way that it feels to experience FSD. And so he said that probably what Tesla should do is to go back and re-offer free trials to the entire fleet here in North America when they do that, so that every time they make the system better, everyone has a chance to try it and see if, is this the time that I'm actually comfortable enough with the system to be willing to buy it. And so their ability to sell and market FSD to every single vehicle in the fleet over time, for right now, just here in North America, is an exceptional piece of capability for just increasing the revenue that they can earn off of those vehicles, even before we get to Robotaxi. And then if you take that next logical step and say, okay, if they can do that and they can get people comfortable with the ability of the car to drive, then the person should have confidence in being willing to put their vehicle on the Tesla network, so that it can be a robotaxi. And I think all of that is just, when you combine it, is really exciting.
Yeah, very cool. Okay, let's talk about again. I think the main story is him saying that FSD is getting extremely good. It's just incredibly good. You have to believe if you believe exponential, if you believe what he's saying, then you're gonna be on board in this. Let's listen to him talking about that.
But I think that actually will be quite significant. We also are no longer compute constrained for training. So I check in with the team. It's like, is there anything we could do to improve the pace of progress with respect to training and inference? And currently that is not the limiting factor. In fact, the limiting factor right now is that the amount of miles between interventions is so long that it takes quite a while to figure out which version is better than the other version, because none of them are requiring any interventions. So it's like, if you start getting to like thousands of miles between interventions, or you like 10,000 miles to get an intervention, then the average person only drives about 10,000 miles in a year. And if it's in an urban environment, and the average speed is 20 miles an hour, so our professional test drivers get pretty bored, frankly. They're like, okay, I drove all week and there was no intervention. Like the highlight of the week would be like, yes, an intervention, finally. It's like getting to that point. So this is where actually having a giant fleet is extremely important, because we can deploy a new FSD model and run it in shadow mode and see how well it performs. Compare how the human drives the car versus the new self-driving build, and then analyze that delta in shadow mode, like the shadow knows, or doesn't know, as the case may be, and then be able to assess by getting billions of miles very quickly with the giant fleet. Like that, basically, that data engine is incredibly helpful. Actually, it's not possible to solve the self-driving problem without having millions of vehicles on the road. So that's actually is like figuring out clever ways to test how good the next FSD build is actually the limiting factor right now. And then, of course, like I said, we are building another training data center right here, which will be dedicated to hardware 4 training. So we'll bifurcate hardware 3 and hardware 4 training later this year. We'll keep improving hardware 3, but we're going to uncork the full capability of hardware 4 as well. So, yeah.
Wow. Okay. So many statements there. The one that stood out for me was when he said that you're not going to be able to get to Robotaxi or of solving this problem if you don't have millions of cars on the road. And then he talked about just how the number of miles driven before you can get any intervention, that it's so hard now to determine. He must be talking about 12.5 and 12.6, because certainly it's not yet 12.3, and they're certainly not yet 12.4 probably. uh yeah, what's your guesses? What you're thinking?
Yeah, I think that the point about the millions of vehicles is extremely important when you think about the competitiveness of FSD versus all these other autonomous driving systems that are out there, whether it's Waymo or Baidu or any of these things. That if you believe that regulators are going to require proof that the software version that is running the car is in fact safe, and not just safe, but safer than humans, which implies that, you've got to have way fewer accidents per mile driven than those other things. In order to prove that, you have to have data, and to have data you need millions and millions and millions, billions of miles actually, in order to make that case with the proper data. And so that's where it comes down to, okay, I don't know how Baidu or Waymo or these other companies that are pursuing a different path, how do they provide that amount of data? I think Baidu's the wrong. No, Baidu might be the right. I think they are pursuing a semi Waymo ish um,
Hmm. Oh, they are.
path.
Hmm.
Yeah, and so it's, limited number of vehicles that has lidar. I think they've been making some changes, but yeah, basically you have to be looking at a company that has a large fleet of cars in order to get there. Um, so that's huge, because that means, if true, that there really is no competition that's on the horizon at this point in time for full self-driving robotaxis at scale besides Tesla. And that means that, the longer that situation persists in the market, the more market share and the more profit Tesla can hoover up. Um, so, I mean, I expect there have to be competitors that emerge, but I don't know exactly where they're going to be coming from. And I think, that's something that is a positive position to be in as a Tesla shareholder. So then when we come back to the comments about the fact that we haven't even begun to unlock the capability of the hardware for computer for the future of the Tesla Robotaxi network, that's positive for two reasons. It means that, hey, hardware 3 is still a great computer. It can still improve the capability of FSD a long ways from here until you know, potentially all the way to robotaxis. That is that open question mark that everyone wants to know. Are the 6 million cars that are on the road, most of them are hardware 3? There's, it's probably roughly a million and some change that are hardware 4 at this point in time. So, well more than 75% of the fleet, we'll say, is probably on hardware 3 if you just think about it that way. Can those cars go all the way to a robotaxi network? We don't know for sure that they can. We certainly know that they can get a lot better than they are today, and it feels like they're getting pretty close. Um, but what that does mean is that hardware 4 is going to have safety capabilities that far exceed hardware 3, and that's what all the new cars are going to be built on. And then we don't know, do we launch this next generation platform vehicle? Are those going to be running hardware 4, or are they going to be running hardware 5? Elon said that hardware 5 is probably about 18 months away, and that it is like a 10 times improvement in compute over the capabilities of hardware 4. And so that just means that they're continuing to push the envelope on what is going to be possible from both a software standpoint and a hardware standpoint, on making this system as capable and safe as possible. And right now there's no one who even has a hardware setup in a vehicle that is as capable as hardware 3 for the number of watts that it consumes. And that is a huge piece of the equation that you're going to need. You need an efficient computer in order to run this software um, as quickly as it needs to be run, in real time, all those things. And so they're already ahead, and they're continuing to accelerate on the hardware front, the lead that they have. And, we're still waiting for someone else to
Mhm.
even come in and compete with Tesla in 2019, much less Tesla in 2024.
Do you believe him when he says that, you can drive the car and we don't even know when there's going to be another intervention?
Um, I think that there are some test situations that, Elon has an entire system of validation that's going on in between when they finish training and when it rolls out. I think there are definitely parts of that validation pipeline where they are starving for interventions. I doubt that that extends all the way to lots and lots of real world customer driving yet at this point in time. But I'm hoping that, maybe we do get a hint of that in 12.5. That's where he can see things that we can't see, and we don't know exactly what pieces of data he's using to say that. I certainly hope that in 12.5, we are talking about thousands and thousands of miles between intervention on average for the average customer. That would be incredible.
Yeah. He's very confident. He said, and he repeated, and he said it in a very confident way. So, gosh, I guess you have to believe that exponential curve is happening, and you have to believe that when he says that we're almost getting to the point where there's no interventions. Wow. Okay. Can't
Yeah.
wait for us to experience that. What about
I would
this?
say my skeptical, he admits his optimism. I would say that my skeptical side, my realistic expectation on this is that we do get to that point in the next 24 months, but that probably is not version 12.5. I would love to be proven wrong on that, but
Well,
I
he
think
says
that's
he's
where I'm kind of reining in my
yeah.
optimism.
Well, he says he's already playing with 12.5 and 12.6. So maybe it's 12.6. But because he kept saying it's exponential, 10 times better each one. Now, um, when I was in my live stream yesterday, one of the presenter speakers was Robin from Robin TV in Europe. He made a good point. He said that, well, if hardware 5 is going to be 10 times better than hardware 4, and he kept saying that it's going to come out 16 months from now, like a year and a half from now, that could be when they do the Robotaxi then.
I was wondering the same thing. If, is that the timeline for the rollout, the beginning of manufacturing for the next generation vehicle platform? I hope that we're not that far away from the beginning of manufacturing for that car. But,
Yeah.
you know, things have definitely taken longer on a lot of the big fronts than we have hoped. So it's possible.
Mhm. Yeah, I thought it was very interesting. Thank you so much, Hans. Follow him on his YouTube channel. You can see how incredibly intelligent this guy is. Good information about bots and the AI, and of course, FSD. Follow him on his YouTube channel at Hans C. Nelson. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye. I've created a website that is the most comprehensive resource for the Tesla investor. Please check it out. Simply go to my website at herbertong.com.